Are you in the zone?
Oh, yeah. Now I am.
You know, picking a theme song for a podcast is of utmost importance.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't know what else could get us into the zone.
I needed that to get me into the zone.
Are you a little tired today, Brian?
Last night was horrible. It was rough.
Oh. All right. Do we go public with this?
Yes. The Dodgers beat the Braves in 7 games. We stayed up. Me and my 2 little girls stayed up till midnight. And then what makes it worse is my wife is from LA. My father-in-law has brainwashed all of my children into believing that the Dodgers are the greatest team on the planet. So I'm in this Dodger cave surrounded by Dodger bobbleheads and Dodger memorabilia.
Oh, yeah.
And then I get to watch the Braves.
Oh, so
lose.
you guys watched it in that
yes.
Dodger
I mean, it was
zone.
like rubbing salt in the wound.
Yeah, we stayed up and watched it too, and it was. I mean, they were in it. They had a chance. They were in it. It's kind of a sad deal. By the way, this is That's Worth Repeating.
Oh yeah,
and I'm Richard Goff, and you are
Brian Irby.
Remember last time you had like fans cheering for you?
Yeah.
I have plenty of sound effects I can throw in. I don't want you to get in the big head. Yeah, so it's good to be back with you, all you listeners out there, whoever you are and wherever you are, and here with Brian. We're going to jump into another quote. And Brian, I don't really know how to introduce this one.
All right.
We talked about this a little bit ahead of time, and you know, we tend to meander back and forth between serious and foolishness.
Yeah.
And this is one of those just sort of general subjects that it's hard to really find points of levity.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not what we need to do today. And so we'll just kind of jump into our quotable quote by a notable person. And our notable person is Nancy Pearcey. Now, you may know Nancy Pearcey as the author of Total Truth.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that book? A very formidable book, huge book.
Yeah.
Heavy book, not just because it's got a lot of pages.
Yeah.
But the content and the research and the footnotes, and it's a very, very thorough treatment of really worldview and ultimately biblical worldview, and contrasting that with what you might just generally say secular thinking. And just she's a phenomenal writer and really a brilliant woman. Let me give a little bio on Nancy Pearcey before we jump in. So I'm just reading this from a little bio that was put together for her. She's heralded as America's preeminent evangelical Protestant female intellectual, author of Love Thy Body, Answering Hard Questions About Life and Sexuality, Total Truth, as I just said, Liberating Christianity from Its Cultural Captivity, which won a whole bunch of awards. And then in addition to that, several other works that she's written. She's been a visiting scholar at Biola University's Torrey Honors Institute. She's professor of worldview studies at Cairn University and Francis A. Schaeffer Scholar at the World Journalism Institute. She's a professor of apologetics and scholar in residence at Houston Baptist University, a fellow at the Discovery Institute's Center for Science and Culture, and editor-at-large at the Pearcey Report.
Wow.
So she's got a few things going on. This is another thing that caught my attention. It talks about how she's addressed staffers on Capitol Hill and the White House and actors and screenwriters in Hollywood and scientists, and on and on it goes. But then it says she's published 100-plus articles in outlets such as The Washington Post, The Washington Times, First Things, American Thinker, Human Events, Christianity Today, Books and Culture, World, Human Life Review, American Enterprise, The Daily Caller, and Regent University Law Review. And I was reading that, I was thinking, that's exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's exactly 12 more publications than I've been published in.
But you're still getting there.
So anyway, I mean,
that's exactly 12.
Yeah,
that's funny.
So I mean, we're talking about a notable person.
Yeah, for sure.
she's definitely in that category, and just a brilliant mind, a very clear thinker. And I thought kind of what we've done a little bit on previous episodes, I'll give you a little warm up of some of the things that she said, to kind of give you sort of a taste of what's driving a lot of her writing and a lot of her speaking. She talks a lot about this idea of the fact-value split, and she basically borrows from Francis Schaeffer's first floor, second floor kind of ideas about thinking, and how on the first floor is sort of empirical facts. It's the realm of science. Mm-hmm. It's what's really most important. And on the second floor is values and morals and, spirituality and religion and all that kind of thing. And it's sort of secondary, and it's not really what's most important. Mm-hmm. So here's a quote that kind of ties into that whole principle. She says, "Modern secular thought has its own dualism. It treats only the physical world as knowable and testable, while locking everything else, mind, spirit, morality, meaning, into the realm of private subjective feelings, the so-called fact-value split." So that kind of a good summary of what's behind a lot of her writing, regardless of the subject. She's really kind of going after what is an erroneous split. When you think about a biblical worldview, we are integrated soul, mind, and body. Yeah. So she's talked a lot about the importance of marriage and family. And really when she's talking about cultural apologetics and the foundation of the family, we've talked about this on past episodes. And of course, we talk about this a lot in general and how important family is and in all things, but in particular in culture and society, and in particular for us in the church. But she said this about marriage and the defense of it. She said, "The defense of marriage is the defense of freedom, neither of which is obsolete." Yeah. So she basically takes this whole issue of defending marriage as defined between a man and a woman for life as not just a defense of a political position on marriage, but it's a defense of actual freedom. So she's really into tying transcendent truths to what other people might want to diminish into political intramural fights or that kind of thing. Another little quote from her. This ties into where we're headed. She says, "The more we learn about life, the less plausible is any evolutionary theory that relies on blind, undirected, piece-by-piece change." So she goes after what is the dominant ideology, particularly in the academy, but really it's pervasive in our culture now, and that is sort of a very Darwinian materialistic philosophy and view of life. And yet this premium that our society places on science as being preeminent, the more advanced scientific tools and scientific research and technologies that enable more specific, more minute forms of discovery, the more undermining it is to Darwinian naturalism. An interesting dynamic there. So getting to our quotable quote of the day by Nancy Pearcey. She did an interview back in November of 2018, and really the interview, it was with Mike Huckabee on his show, his TV show, and it was an interview that she did in November, as I said, of 2018, because she had published a book in January of that same year called Love Thy Body, Answering Hard Questions About Life and Sexuality. And so in that interview, of course, he's diving into some of these issues that she writes about in her book, and really she's talking about how this fact value split has even separated us in the way we think about our physical being, our physical bodies, and understanding that explains a lot of the current thinking on things like gay marriage or homosexuality or transgenderism or abortion and these kinds of things. Yeah. So in that interview, this is a pretty short quote, so I'll play it a couple of times and then we'll sort of unpack it a little bit. So here's what Nancy Pearcey said.
Merely being human is not enough for human rights. Merely being human is not enough for human rights.
So merely being human is not enough for human rights. Now, what comes to mind when you think of that? Just think about it on the face of it, on that statement.
Yeah.
Merely being human is not enough for human rights.
Yeah, you have to. I mean,
it seems like inherently contradictory. Is that right?
No, yeah, for sure. But I mean, but you know where she's heading and what she's getting at.
It's interesting because basically we'll play a fuller context of this question or this quote, this answer to the question that she gives here. But she's making a comment. She's basically representing what is the common view now amongst those who would be pro-abortion. She's not articulating her own position. She's basically highlighting this is the thinking now. And again, she says merely being human is not enough for human rights. So apply that to the unborn, and where do you end up? Where do you end up if you apply this principle that just being human is not enough for you to have human rights?
Yeah. Well, I mean, then there's no defense against any whatever ideology human entails, and I think that's what. Because I think you could. I mean, I know where we're heading with this, but you could take this outside of the realm of just abortion.
Yeah.
It's pretty much if you don't agree with the norm ideology of the day, then you have no right to defend.
Yeah, this
your
is
rights.
true. This is true.
Yeah.
This basically you could apply this to even ideas about cancel culture.
I mean, it's the same thing Hitler did with. I mean, it's if you can make someone not human, or even say, yeah, they may have human qualities, but because they don't think like this and act like this, then they're below human level.
Right.
Well, then they have no rights.
Yeah. Interesting. It's interesting that you broaden it that way.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. All right, let's listen to the fuller context. I think that will give us a good springboard into talking about some other related articles and that kind of thing about this challenging subject. So again, I'm going to broaden the context of this interview with Mike Huckabee and Nancy Pearcey.
In the book, you say that secular liberalism destroys human rights. Give us some examples, and let's start with abortion.
Right. Most professional bioethicists today agree that life begins at conception. The evidence from science, from genetics and DNA, is just too strong to deny it. But their stance is summed up by a recent article that was titled, "So what if abortion ends life?" What they're saying is, as long as the fetus is merely human, it's just a disposable piece of matter. It can be killed for any reason or no reason. In other words, merely being human is not enough for human rights.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
So I pulled the article. I mean, I was like, I got to see this article. She mentions this article. It was published in Salon.com. I don't see the date on here, but it's been, I think, a few years ago. She referenced it. It's entitled, "So What If Abortion Ends Life?"
Yeah.
I mean, even the title is a little bit unnerving, right?
Yes.
I mean, so what if, okay, so what, but if you think the title is unnerving, just wait till I read a few quotes. This is an article, "So What If Abortion Ends Life," by Mary Elizabeth Williams. And listen to how, this is the opening line. "Of all the diabolically clever moves the anti-choice lobby has ever pulled, surely one of the greatest has been its consistent co-opting of the word life." Now stop right there for a second. So this is a person who is going to advocate for a position that would flesh out this title, "So What If Abortion Ends Life?"
Yeah.
And the accusation against those who would be pro-life is that they're diabolically clever because they've just co-opted the word life. So that's where it starts.
Yeah.
So basically, there's an assignation on her part against those who would oppose abortion rights as diabolical.
Yeah.
So just think of the twisting of this in someone's mind. I'm just going to read a few quotes that I think are just most telling and in many ways sad and unnerving. She says this: I believe that that's what a fetus is, a human life. And that doesn't make me one iota less solidly pro-choice. So that's basically her opening salvo.
Yeah.
Is that I firmly agree. A fetus is not just a bundle of
cells,
unhuman tissue.
Yeah.
She is clearly articulating, which, by the way, there are elements of this that I really appreciate. I appreciate the honesty, even though it's really sad and unnerving.
Yeah.
But she says firmly, I believe that's what a fetus is, a human life, and that doesn't make me one iota less solidly pro-choice. So the fact that she recognizes the humanity of the unborn doesn't change her position. But she goes on, again, tagging onto that diabolical accusation. She says this: we play into the sneaky, dirty tricks of the anti-choice lobby when we on the pro-choice side squirm so uncomfortably at the ways in which they've repeatedly appropriated the concept of life. So just us being advocates of life makes us sneaky and playing sneaky and dirty tricks. She says this: here's the complicated reality in which we live. All life is not equal. Now we're going to get to the nub of it, okay? All life is not equal. That's a difficult thing for liberals like me to talk about, lest we wind up looking like death panel loving, killing your grandma and your precious baby stormtroopers. Yet a fetus can be a human life without having the same rights as the woman in whose body it resides. So this is what Pearcey was talking about.
Yeah.
Being human is not enough. Actually, she says merely being human is not enough for human rights. So this woman here is perfectly articulating that. All of life is not equal. A fetus can be a human life without having the same rights as the woman in whose body it resides. She's the boss. Her life and what is right for her circumstances and her health should automatically trump the rights of the non-autonomous entity inside her. Always.
That's crazy.
So think of the emphatic nature of what she is saying, declaring, and almost, this is what's interesting to me. People who are pro-life oftentimes can base their pro-life sort of beliefs in their faith.
Yeah.
It's a imago Dei, it's image of God kinds of thinking and worldview that kind of fuel that, and oftentimes, and those people, our kind of people, we are accused of being dogmatic, and having ideas about transcendent truth. How do we have the authority to claim that what we say is true kind of thing?
Yeah.
And yet here she is declaring dogmatically sort of a transcendent law. Her transcendent law is this: a fetus can be a human life without having the same rights as the woman in whose body it resides. She's the boss. Her life and what is right for her circumstances and her health should automatically trump the rights of the non-autonomous entity inside of her always. When we on the pro-choice side get cagey around the life question, it makes us illogically contradictory. Now, when I first heard that, is that a thing? If you're illogically contradictory, does that make you logically non-contradictory? I don't know. That seemed like a strange way to say it. She says, I have friends who have referred to their abortions in terms of, quote, scraping out a bunch of cells. And then a few years later were exultant over the pregnancies that they unhesitatingly described in terms of, quote, the baby and, quote, this kid. I know women who have been relieved at their abortions and grieved over their miscarriages. Why can't we agree that how they felt about their pregnancies was vastly different, but that it's pretty silly to pretend that what was growing inside of them wasn't the same? Fetuses aren't selective like that. They don't qualify as human life only if they're intended to be born.
That's a good point.
It's a fantastic point. So she's basically arguing against
this
notion that for people in the abortion movement to say that it's not a human life.
Dude, this is dark. She just is basically saying, look, let's call it a baby. Let's call it life.
That's right.
Let's just admit that we are killing this life.
That's right.
Because it has no value.
That's right. And I mean, she makes no bones about it. Makes no bones about it at all. Now, here's how she concludes the article. This is the last sentence in the article.
Mm-hmm.
I would put the life of a mother over the life of a fetus every single time, even if I still need to acknowledge my conviction that the fetus is indeed a life worth sacrificing.
Yeah. So that mentality is what leads to rampant evil.
Can you imagine?
Take that and apply it to anyone that doesn't agree with what you think and what you believe and live life the way that you think, because that becomes infringement on your health and well-being and your good, you know?
Yeah. So what you're saying so clearly is that this philosophy in a person is never going to be confined to one issue.
Absolutely
like
not.
Abortion.
It's only confined to abortion now because that's culturally acceptable. But just wait until the culture accepts that mindset, and you can justify the murder of Christians. You could justify the murder of a different people group. You can justify the murder of people that politically are in a different place, because if they become, like you said, diabolical and evil and twisted in their thought, then you become the hero by murdering them and extinguishing their life.
How could we possibly stand by in a society and let diabolical people like that remain?
You got to serve justice. And justice is destroying the things that strive to fight against the rights and the well-being and the goodness of people. Yeah, so man, that's messed up. That is twisted.
And so you think about what we're experiencing in our culture today and how rapidly things have sort of escalated to the point that they're at now. It's no longer, I think, acceptable, no longer wise. Let's put it this way. It's no longer wise, at minimum, for believers to merely see these kinds of issues as the domain of liberal people.
Yeah.
As well, that's just those people that are more liberal, or they're more politically liberal, or that's just whatever. No, what we're talking about is something that is demonic.
Mm-hmm.
It is destructive. It is so unbelievably twisted that I mentioned this to you earlier. I mean, I can't help but go back to the scene in the garden in Genesis chapter 3, where you literally have the first two people created by God who had intimate fellowship with their Maker in a perfect environment in which they could look around. Even the text references it. And even Eve states this, that we've been given every tree of the garden. It's pleasing. It's good for food.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to the eyes. I mean, in other words, every sensual, pure experience was theirs in that environment. So they had empirical evidence. They had direct contact with the eternal God who had made them. And yet, even in the midst of all that, they were led astray by the complete craftiness and twisting truth and making a lie sound true and more appealing than everything else around them.
Yeah.
So it's just staggering to me to think about that. And yet, basically where we are right now, and we've talked about this a little bit in previous times, and is we're in a time where basically the masks are off. There's no more hiding.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more sort of holding back on these kinds of ideologies. These kinds of ways of thinking are no longer sort of confined to certain quarters of society that are just more activist in their orientation.
Yeah.
This is pervasive now. And I think that in an age of social media and the immediate, instantaneous transmission of ideas, across vast swaths of the population around the world. You're only seeing this. That's the escalation.
Yeah.
The exponential escalation of this ideology and spreading it. I mean, everybody was teed up.
Yeah.
People were teed up to embrace this, to want to suppress the truth and unrighteousness. I mean, that's just apart from the grace of God and the work of the Spirit in and through the gospel. And anyone, we're all teed up.
That's right.
For that kind of belief.
Yeah.
And so here we are now. So obviously this is a sobering kind of thing, but I think it's important for us as believers to really see clearly what it is we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
And it takes shape. So you've got one article where you've got a person who's writing pretty aggressively to advocate for her position. She's coming at it from the standpoint of having a premise and formulating an argument and supporting her argument with other details and facts. Her intent is to state a persuasive case for her position.
Mm-hmm.
But this ideology manifests itself in all kinds of ways, even in the domain of appreciated creativity and artistry. There was a interview that took place just last week, and it was with Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac fame. Did you ever?
That's funny. I thought Stevie Nicks was dead.
Yeah.
I guess not.
That would make an interview last week difficult.
Yeah.
Fraudulent or whatever. No, she's not dead. She's 72.
Okay.
So she's
sorry, Stevie.
Yeah. I mean, she's no spring chicken, as they say anymore. As I am not a spring chicken anymore. But nevertheless, in this interview, you have this person who has been a musician pretty much all her life, has had fame and fortune, and so she sort of steps into this discussion in a very unique but very similar way. And so I kind of thought it'd be interesting to see how she articulates this from the standpoint of an artist.
Mm-hmm.
The interviewer's name is Jenny Stevens of The Guardian, UK publication. So the question, one of the questions she asked Stevie Nicks was this: what would it mean to stop singing? So what if you couldn't sing anymore?
Yeah.
Really, the context of the question, I think Stevie Nicks' mom passed away not too long ago. I think it might have been COVID related, and I think she lost her voice because of the respiratory issues and that kind of thing. I can't remember the context of all that, but I think that had something to do with that. And so that's where this question is coming from. What would it mean for her to stop singing? And here's how Stevie Nicks replied: "It would kill me. It isn't just singing. It's that I would never perform again, that I would never dance across the stages of the world again." And she pauses and she sighs. "I'm not, at 72 years old, willing to give up my career." Now, don't linger here too long, but I'm not sure being 72 years old conjures up the greatest images of dancing across stages around the world again. It's always funny to me to see these old rock stars who, it's like they've retired like 7 times, but they're going on a final world tour, and they're like, anyway, I'm not going to go there, but you know what I'm talking about. So she's basically stating her position that this is everything to me, which, that's not uncommon. She was asked about her approach to spirituality, and she says that for all her fears about her career, she, quote, "Some people are really afraid of dying, but I'm not. I've always believed in spiritual forces. I absolutely know that my mom is around all the time." So that's her spiritual, kind of sensibility there. So this is where it gets into sort of our subject matter.
Isn't that kind of scary, though? Can you imagine? I mean, that's your belief that there's dead people around you all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Isn't that like a horror movie?
Spiritual forces.
Yeah.
That's all you need. So toward the end of the article, the interviewer and writer of the article says this: "Women's rights have been on Nix's mind since the death of her hero, the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Can you imagine that's your hero? So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, wait a second.
I was like, Superman, no. Yeah.
Wait, Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac, rock and roll star, band, whatever. And her hero is a Supreme Court justice? It's like, really? Okay, whatever. So she goes on. The death of her hero, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, last month. So this is a quote from Stevie Nicks. She says, "Abortion rights, that was really my generation's fight. If President Trump wins this election and puts the judge he wants in, she will absolutely outlaw it and push women back into back alley abortions." So there's her political statement or whatever. But that's not the main point that I wanted to get to. This is the backstory. Nicks terminated a pregnancy in 1979 when Fleetwood Mac were at their height, and she was dating the Eagles singer Don Henley. What did it mean to be able to make that choice? Nicks says, "If I had not had that abortion, I'm pretty sure there would have been no Fleetwood Mac."
Oh, no.
Now think of that.
That's awful. Like, no Fleetwood Mac?
I mean, I can't help
That's definitely worth murder.
Okay, so if you think, I know. So,
Yeah.
but if you think that's, I mean, that's enough for us to just stop and comment on.
Yeah.
But that's not where she stops.
Yeah.
It gets worse. She says, "There's just no way that I could have had a child then, working as hard as we worked constantly, and there were a lot of drugs. I was doing a lot of drugs. I would have had to walk away."
Yeah, that's sad. I mean, I see where she's coming from. I mean, being able to do drugs and being able to play music, that's definitely worth killing a child.
Yeah, but see, you don't understand. There's an altruistic motive here. She is serving humanity, and here's...
Okay, sorry. I need to keep listening.
Don't judge too quickly. So this is what Christians get accused of all the time.
You're right.
We jump to conclusions, and we're quick to judge.
That's right.
All right, so let her finish.
Okay.
Would you please?
Yeah.
In fact, I probably need to make sure you get the whole flow of this.
Okay.
Because the potency of the argument, is going to be lost.
All right, back up. Let's start with Fleetwood Mac.
Okay. So she says, "I'm pretty sure there would have been no Fleetwood Mac. There's just no way that I could have had a child then, working as hard as we worked constantly. And there were a lot of drugs. I was doing a lot of drugs. I would have had to walk away." She pauses. "And I knew that the music we were going to bring to the world was going to heal so many people's hearts and make people so happy. And I thought, you know what? That's really important. There's not another band in the world that has 2 lead women singers, 2 lead women writers. That was my world's mission." Now, are you convinced?
Yes. The next time I see a 25-cent record at Goodwill of Fleetwood Mac, I will definitely cherish that.
Now, think of such a thing. But that's what she's arguing. She's arguing the same thing that other writer in that article that I read previously from is arguing. That my life and my sense of contribution to the world and my sense of significance
always trumps
this inconvenient, whatever you want to call it. Call it a human life if you want to be honest with science, or just call it something you had to do away with. Now, here's another interesting little tidbit that I don't have a lot of broader information or context on, but as I was reading a little bit about this, she wrote a song called Sarah that was about this unborn, aborted child.
Yeah.
So she even saw that child as a life, a human life that actually had a name. And in the article that I read, it says that if she would have had the child, she would have named her Sarah. And both she and Don Henley admitted that they that song was written for that aborted child. So think of the twisted nature of all this. So now she's 72. She's at a point in life where, she's, seemingly you would be much more reflective on your life and on decisions you've made. And yet she has found great comfort in looking back at her life and all that she contributed to make the termination, really the murder of that baby, completely justified.
Yeah.
So there's the artistic view.
Yeah.
There's the artist view. So when we look at this, we think about this, kind of a heavy subject. But what are your thoughts on our gospel witness in this kind of environment?
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you brought back to that, because it's so easy to get so angry, and it's so easy just to think how evil and wicked man can be. But that's it. That Christ knew that about me and you, along with Stevie Nicks and everyone else, even the lady that wrote that article. And it's and Jesus Christ can save anyone. He can transform anyone. Think about Saul, who he turned into Paul, that was going around murdering people and putting women and children in prison. And Manasseh, man, that's a great example of the Old Testament. Manasseh, the most wicked king of Judah, who was sacrificing children in times of hard circumstance to get what they want during that time. And then God changed him. And even though he couldn't change the nation in the short amount of time, it goes to show you that, that was great, Richard, bringing it back to that more than anything, those articles need to compel us to stand firm and preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, to live it out, to pray for our enemies and to love them. And we need Christ.
I think as I thought about this whole subject, I couldn't help but think of Psalm 139, that familiar to many, that familiar psalm that speaks of the creative power of God and the preciousness of every life that he creates. So I thought I'd just kind of read from it as a way to kind of wrap up our thinking around the gospel and around the work of our Creator. Starting in verse 13, "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. You saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I would count them, they are more than the sand. I awake and I am still with you." So you have this wonderful praise in Psalm 139 of the God who has created everyone, formed them, had known their frame, had numbered their days, had known every one of them before there was one. And I think that understanding the utter deception that people fall under should grieve us. Yes, we should be righteously angry at sin and what it can cause and the havoc that it can wreak, but that should be met with a compassion and a grieving heart for the lostness of humanity, and a great praise to the Lord for him saving us out of that.
Yes, and trusting the Lord that you didn't finish the psalm. You need to finish that psalm.
Oh, I'll keep going.
He opens his eyes after contemplating the love of God and the grace of God, all the things that you just talked about.
Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God.
Yeah.
O men of blood, depart from me. They speak against you with malicious intent. Your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord, and do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with complete hatred. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
Every abortionist will end up in the hands of God. And everyone that hates the blood of his little infants that he's weaving in the womb will end up in his eternal wrath. But we need to search our hearts for anything in us that is as evil as that, which is even our hatred of them, and repent of that. Run back to the cross. The fact that we are evil. We are the revilers. And he sent his son to die for us. And trust in his timing and in his judgment and his vengeance. Because the flip side of abortion is that every one of those little babies that we are mutilating they are all safe in the hands of Jesus Christ in heaven, and he's holding them all.
Yeah.
He takes care of all those kids.
Yeah.
And he'll also take care of all those who murdered his children. But some of those murders he himself will redeem and justify in this life, which is the greatest gift.
Staggering.
Yeah.
Staggering. Well, heavy stuff, but I think needful for us to try to dive into this and see if the Lord might use it. So we hope that this has been helpful to you, and we'll look forward to being together again soon.
Yep.